Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and it's Bruno Mars and Zack Bryan here, and it's Billboard BREAKDOwn.
I don't remember.
So believe it or not, I'm actually a pretty optimistic person. Perhaps hard to tell coming from me, a critic, but that's more from the perspective of I hope that something is better while being accurate and fair and dissecting on what works or doesn't work. And I bring all this up because in the week where my laptop's motherboard died mid-edit on my newest video essay for my main channel, it's on ASAP Rocky, turns out I got a lot to say, the Billboard charts were already delayed thanks to Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and even then there's the expectation that thanks to a pretty substantial album bomb from Zack Bryan, the Hot 100 got a substantial shakeup. I'm calling that a slightly fortuitous win, even if the laptop setback was pretty damn substantial. No way getting around that. Please support the Patreon, that always helps. And this is where I should also mention that Billboard will no longer be counting YouTube streams this week going forward. For context, this has to do with a glorified pissing match between YouTube wanting its free ad-supported streams to be counted as more alongside the paid subscription streams, whereas Billboard is still drawing the line, as it has for every other streamer, that paid streams actually paying for music matters more. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, especially given the platform I'm on and who actually cuts me a monthly revenue check. I'm on Billboard's side here. Paying for art should matter more than trying to amplify the value of your ad business, especially when said ads have only become more obtrusive and with limited control from content creators. Yeah, when I'm fighting out copyright claims, I actually got limited control as to where I can place ads. Sorry, y'all. Ergo, any argument that YouTube is doing this in support of creators, it's goddamn laughable. Does it bother me that Billboard's data is going to be slightly less representative of how people consume music? Yeah, of course it does. But this is also a case where sticking to their guns and recognizing music's monetary value rather than how many ads you can place alongside it, I think that's important. Hell, if they fix up the tracking year, I might be willing to forgive Billboard some of their regular idiocy. Wouldn't that be nice? But really, this was always going to be a big week for the Hot 100 because debuting solo at number 1 for the first time in his career, Bruno Mars with I Just Might. We'll get into the song proper much later on, but Bruno Mars is the prime example of how a well-established retro pastiche can win over a silent majority audience pretty much everywhere. So not only did he immediately seize the top spot on sales and streaming, his radio momentum, it's already huge. And that's fortunate timing because The Fate of Ophelia by Taylor Swift has been seeing some cracks down at number 2. Still very competitive on sales, but both streaming and the radio saw a slip, which probably means Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters is going to be the major competition here at number 3. It's not quite as strong on sales. Playing the remix game is really where Taylor Swift kind of saved her margin, but the streaming is at least stable, even if the radio was significantly softer. Now this only opens the door further for Olivia Dean and Man I Need at number 4, with a real radio surge, but it's just not winning the positional battle on streaming just yet at the moment, and the sales aren't really there. And even then, that was enough to get over Ordinary by Alex Warren down at number 5, where despite being dominant on the radio, the margin has shrunk and it's finally starting to lose out on streaming, even if he's got the edge over Olivia Dean on sales. What might be a more stable competitor is Choosin' Texas by Ella Langley at number 6, which did fall positionally, but is still impressively strong on streaming and sales. Shame radio isn't making that crossover push. If there'd be a time to do it, Music Row, it would be now. But it did keep it over End of Beginning by Dijo, which held in the top 10 for another week at number 7, courtesy of fantastic streaming and a lot more sales than you would expect. But unless it's getting shipped to radio again soon, I don't see this rebound really lasting much longer. Now that could open the door for Somber and Back to Friends at number 8, especially with solid radio and a nice sales rebound, but with the streaming falling back, it might have missed missed the window to get any higher then, and even then it's better than Folded by Kalani at number 9, as despite picking up traction on the radio, its streaming's going into the tank. I can see this being gone pretty soon. Finally, Opalite by Taylor Swift is clinging on to number 10, but that might be too little too late. The radio is actually stable, but the growth is kind of stalled out and streaming's falling back. It's certainly a lot more vulnerable than Taylor Swift might want right now. So naturally, let's get into those losers and dropouts. As expected with any given album bomb, there's actually a lot of the latter, perfectly timed to throw a lot of songs into recurrency for the start of 2026. What I Want by Morgan Wallen and Tate McRae, Man-Child by Sabrina Carpenter, Love Me Not by Raven Lenae, Last One to Know by Gavin Adcock, Your Idol from K-Pop Demon Hunters, Wishlist and The Life of a Showgirl featuring Sabrina Carpenter by Taylor Swift, and Sugar on My Tongue by Tyler the Creator. That clears a lot of old songs away, and I can't really complain. It'll be interesting to see how many Billboard will let possibly come back, or get smashed away by whatever A$AP Rocky does next week. More on him later. But as expected, we got a sizable list of losers here too. And let's keep going with Taylor Swift, as Elizabeth Taylor fell to 78, and Father Figure hit 98. And I mentioned Sabrina Carpenter, Tears fell sharply down to 74. The person I did not want to see losses for was Olivia Dean, with both Nice to Each Other and Let Alone the One You Love falling to 81 and 84 respectively, but she's got enough going on in the charts right now to compete, and if it means we're pushing out crap like Internet Girl by Cat's Eye off the debut to 59, or Stay Country or Die Tryin' by Blake Shelton at 86, or Mr. Recoup by 21 Savage and Drake at 94, or What an Awesome God by Phil Wickham at 96, or Darlin' by Chase Matthew at 98, that's a massive win. Outside those, we did get Girl Get Up by Doechii and SZA slip back to 91 off the debut, along with Take Me Through There by Metro Boomin, Quavo, Bresky, and YK Nice continuing down to 76, along with 3 AM by Low Shimmy and Don Toliver at 96. The rest... yeah, I'm a little bit sad to see Don't Mind If I Do by Riley Green and Ella Langley at 40, or 12 to 12 by Somber at 54, but they both had respectable runs. Outside them, Beautiful Things by Megan Moroney's at 70, Brunette by Tucker Wetmore at 85, Phantom by SD Kid and Rico Ace at 88, and Camera by Ed Sheeran is still sticking around at 90. Now for our returns and gains, well, we had no returns. It's an album bomb week, and our gains can be summed up by two names, Sienna Spiro and Zara Larsson. Now the former is explainable, but kind of inexcusable, with Die on This Hill now reaching 21, gross, and You Stole the Show at 63 off the debut last week. But Zara Larsson's got real momentum too. I don't care for Stateside with Pink Pantheress bouncing up off its debut to 83, but I've liked Lush Life for years now, and it's up to 48. Look, I might as well correct some old grievances here and make it a hit proper. I would not complain. I talked about it on Billboard Breakdown nearly a decade ago. But we are absolutely in large album bomb territory with Zack Bryan with 18 new entries, which means I'm sticking to talking about those in the top 20, or if there are any best or worst this week. Unlikely with the latter, given what's coming. Outside those, You Can Still Come Home at 95, Rivers and Creeks at 89, If They Come Lookin' at 87, Anyways at 73, Slicked Back at 72, South and Pine at 69, With Heaven on Top at 68, Santa Fe at 61, Dry Deserts at 58, Drownin' at 57, Deanne's Denim at 56, Skin at 51, Runny Eggs at 46, Appetite at 38, and Say Why at 25. Man, really hard not to shout out the title track, Deanne's Denim, and You Can Still Come Home, maybe even Say Why. There's a lot of terrific songs across a bloated track list. Incidentally, if you're wondering where my Zack Bryan review is, certain tiers of main channel YouTube members or patrons have already seen it in my Discord. It'll be posted more widely at a later date, not quite sure when, but if you're curious to see more, it's been live for over a week now, if you're curious. But now on to a slightly more reasonable week. And yep, we gotta start with number 100, Big Guy by Ice Spice.
SpongeBob, big guy, pants okay. SpongeBob, big guy, pants okay. Big guy, big guy, big guy, big guy. SpongeBob, big guy, pants okay. SpongeBob, big guy, pants okay.
Seriously? We're still doing this? Look, my issue with Ice Spice has never been that she was bad so much as that she was painfully limited as an MC, that her 15 minutes were destined to run out very fast if she didn't show some versatility in her flow or some more intriguing content. So naturally, we get a song from her from the SpongeBob movie soundtrack, and where I reveal I've never been the biggest fan of that franchise. It came after my time and has only clicked sporadically since when I've watched it. And okay, honest question, who thought this was a good idea? Ice Spice still raps in a clunky deadpan where you can tell she's really struggling to fuse her painfully limited subject matter into a more kid-friendly flexing song, and it feels like someone trying to reverse engineer the Kidz Bop version, where she's trying to talk about the big guy pants that she shares with SpongeBob as she tries to flex eating good and her pearls. I feel like there's supposed to be some brand of absurdism in the whole scene, because there's no whimsy or even playfulness in the delivery or content, where the production then pairs these stiff, oily squonks and warps and a little strings-driven grandiosity with a Jersey club knock and admittedly a pretty solid bouncy groove that feels at least different than what Ice Spice previously used, on the path to maybe giving her a different sound. But then I realized I'd rather listen to the majority of other rappers hop onto the same triplet and try it, other than her. Coupled with the bad bass mastering, yeah, the last thing I need is for this to be big. Next, number 77, Rather Be by Kid Laroi featuring Lithe. So I was actually somewhat curious about how Kid Laroi was going to respond to Tate McRae dedicating so much of her deluxe reissue a couple months back to taking pot shots at him post-breakup. I didn't remotely expect it to be good, but hey, I could be surprised. Well, let me let everyone down easy and confirm it's not the Clean Bandit cover. And you know, I said that Kid Laroi was probably not going to do better than Tate McRae, and listening to this, I think he actually agrees, as this is a post-breakup wallow where you can tell he desperately wishes that they could get back together, even as he tries to move on by getting fucked up around a bunch of strippers. And credit to Kid Laroi, not only has he become a considerably better singer since his breakout back in like 2021, I kind of respect how he can't even pretend to be tough here. He doesn't just miss the sex, he misses her friendship. You can tell he's taken this really hard, which is why Life's dead-eyed guest verse doesn't remotely fit here, doesn't match the vibe. Of course there are limitations. Kid Laroi's writing still feels painfully basic. It's hard not to feel like a more descriptive R&B crooner who could handle a rap verse would do this way better. Honestly, if there's a song crying out for an old Drake verse, it would be this, especially as the trap drums and the bass sound actually more polished against the hazy, warbling gloss that eventually switches into this murkier, scratchy down-tempo. So, I'm not gonna call it precisely good, but Kid Laroi beat out my very low expectations. This is gonna have an audience? Not bad for it. Number 71, Cannonball by Zack Bryan.
If you was praying to Jesus, we was running from the police. They're using my muses to make fun of me and your face up while your blood sucks from an IV.
The thing about getting sober is that sometimes it's a personal choice that you gotta make alone, and the friends that you ran wild with might not do the same. And at the midpoint of this album, Zack Bryan drops a true tearjerker about the friend who is running wild and kind of self-destructs, where Zack Bryan is convinced that he probably could have or should have gone first. The acoustics and bass are spare, the strings are aching. I love the reckless detail capturing the scenes where that friend sees the highs and lows of winning big and crashing hard and then maybe rising again, where Bryan acknowledges how others use his muses to make fun of them, or at least feel like it's treading over the same territory. But this song taps into how it's all just people who are integral to his life, flawed and messy though they might be, especially if another one of them was taken from him way too soon. It's probably my favorite song from With Heaven on Top, and for damn good reason. Fantastic track, absolutely worth hearing. Number 64, Punk Rocky by A$AP Rocky. Okay, Anyway, I'll have a little more to say about this song, really the album in particular, in that next video essay on my main channel, but I got a simple ask here. When rappers want to imitate rock or punk, what would be wrong with getting guitars that have a little bit more prominence and snarl in the mix, really add some teeth behind it, instead of sounding like the worst possible cross-section of Vic Mensa, Willow Smith, and Kenny Hoopla, without even the decency of Travis Barker to play drums? These desaturated, clanky guitars that immediately fall behind the louder, cleaner drums, where A$AP Rocky is trying to sing through this haze that inevitably becomes auto-tuned as he wallows through this unkempt relationship disagreement, where I have to wonder if he assumes punk just equivocates with immature, because that might be the only thing that could justify all the ugly whinging across this track, where for as often as A$AP Rocky calls her stupid, he's begging her to take him back. What's worse is that for as often as A$AP Rocky tries to come across as more mature on Don't Be Dumb, you get junk like this pushed as a single that doesn't remotely align with it. The sort of badly considered experiment that had me wondering if he first recorded this back in the early 2020s, when these sorts of rock-leaning crossovers in the vein of Trippie Redd were kind of a thing for a couple of months before the pop rock wave burned out way too fast. Either way, this has no business being on the album. It's a complete misunderstanding of A$AP Rocky's strengths and energy and any execution. Really bad song. Skip it. Number 35, Bad News by Zack Bryan.
Boys, I'm giving us hell, I got some bad news. Woke up missing you. My friends are all degenerates, they're all a god. Generational story of dropping the plot. I heard the cops came. Cocky motherfuckers, ain't they?
I remember Zack Bryan getting backlash from conservatives over this song when a fragment of it was released last year calling out ICE. I feel like I shouldn't even have to acknowledge how he came out correct on the other side of that, and that community defense forces in Minnesota should exercise all of their constitutional rights to get those badly trained goose-stepping fash slop out of town. But Bad News is actually doing a lot more than that. It tends to go overlooked that Zack Bryan is a veteran who had a lot of harsh words to say about the double talk that the United States government has for those who serve their country, then to be treated badly back home. But this highlights just how far some of that rot has spread institutionally through the arrogant police departments and the collapsing infrastructure, where extremes in politics are pushed over truth and community, and big business is buying up all the scraps, pushing people out. And with his friends all being degenerates, where else do they have to go than be crushed back out of the system? Truthfully, this song will be coded as liberal by those who don't want to delve deeper and just want mindless fealty to the current grifters and fash running the show, the Asmund Golds of the world, with constant respect to authority that's not earned. But Zack Bryan's actually more even-handed than that, possibly to the song's detriment, as the horns sound around the heavy kick drum and the thicker twang and the ache of the strings. You'd think he would take a page out of the boss's book and try not to equivocate, but this is more a frustrated wail of rage, even if the song never quite explodes. I still think it's effective, pretty great for it, kind of feels needed in a time like this. All I'm saying. Number 17, Sleepless in a Hotel Room by Luke Combs.
Next to you, wide awake, I dream of you, sleepless in a hotel room. Whoa.
I think there's a real chance we might not see Luke Combs tour as much in the near future. In 2024, he put out the excellent Fathers and Sons album, As a New Parent. He's had a few songs now where he's lamented how touring has kept him away from his family. And this song feels like it falls right in that territory. It's minor key, brittle acoustics around the simmering electric guitars, an unsettled reflection of being unable to sleep in a hotel room away from a woman, where it's left rather ambiguous why they are separated, although touring kind of seems likely, and, well, not a lot to say beyond that, but I do think it maybe oversells itself a bit. The big overdubbed hook and whoa-ohs all over the hook not only feel kind of dated, even for country, it doesn't set up any smolder or quiet storm intensity that it could use. That feels like a misstep. I don't know, Luke Combs made a lot of good songs, and he normally has better singles instincts than this, or Back in the Saddle. Days Like These was good, but it feels like an exception, so I guess we'll have to see, wait for the album. In the meantime, I'm not that impressed. I kind of expect better. Number 13, Plastic Cigarette by Zack Bryan.
Dragging on a plastic cigarette with your swim top still wet.
I mean, I guess I can't be surprised that this wound up as the hit. The choppy acoustics and vocal pickups are much cleaner. Zack Bryan's delivery is husky but accessible. The hook is pretty good with a very obvious dropout point for the crowd to sing along. And there's a lot of lines that capture the cautious ambiguity that resides in a lot of great Zack Bryan songs. I like that he already knows that he's going to regret writing this love song. I like that the third verse has lines about this girl collecting shells as it acknowledges what she may have found attractive in him as a bit of a shell, but also how she manufactures the distance from anything that feels that real or uncomfortable. The plastic cigarette, the poems that he wrote that she would never read, the family that cares more about him than she might after she tells him to sober up, but she still tries to cozy up to him even if she hates the smell of the smoke. And there's a burly sort of sleaze to that with your swim top still wet line on the hook. I mean, he's staring at her boobs. He's trying to be poetic about it. Little John Mayer-esque, and I'm not sure that's a compliment. But then again, while this is very far from my favorite Zack Bryan song, it's actually pretty damn good. It sticks with me. I absolutely get why it'll work. I don't hear the magic of another Something in the Orange or I Remember Everything, but if it winds up with a radio run, I wouldn't be surprised. This has worked before. And on that note, number 1, I Just Might by Bruno Mars.
This pretty little lady. Cause if she dances as good as she look right now, I just might make her my baby. I just might make her my baby.
At some point, you have to start asking how long Bruno Mars is going to keep getting away with this, coasting on charisma and charm as he finds this girl so stunning but couldn't bear it if she couldn't dance. So he hopes that she can prove him wrong, and he just might make her his baby. And after hearing the song, honestly, he's probably going to get away with it a little while longer, because man, this brand of jaunty funk is an incredibly easy sell. It helps that DeMille's production's adding a little more scuzzy muscle to the guitar interplay, alongside the flashy horns and the textured drums, where I couldn't help but check to see if Anderson .Paak threw him a quick favor, and they just put aside Silk Sonic as a one-off. Granted, it's nowhere as silly as Silk Sonic was, and that combined with all the doot-doot-doos, which feels like songwriting shorthand from Bruno Mars, playing it a little too easy. So yeah, definitely not my favorite Bruno Mars song either, especially not his best, especially if you know 70s funk and soul, and can tell that while he's bringing a little more vigor in the vocals, it's absolutely nothing new, but I do respect a performer who's built a high enough floor that this can still win me over. Again, would not put this among my favorites of his by any means. It's no Uptown Funk, but it's also hard to dislike. Fun little song. I don't mind it being number 1. At least for now. And that's our week. Thankfully for me, the best and worst fall out fast, with Zack Bryan easily snagging both, and the former with Cannonball as the best and Bad News as the honorable mention. Worst of the week, yeah, Punk Rocky by A$AP Rocky's getting that bottom spot, with Big Guy by Ice Spice as the pretty obvious dishonorable mention, even if I get the impression that some will think that it's heresy Ice Spice did not get the worst song of the week. But we'll likely have more to deal with A$AP Rocky next week, so stay tuned for that. Until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.